insolation or incoming solar radiation. Right. So we have covered insolation. Next that we need to know is something that is called as the terrestrial radiation. What is terrestrial radiation? Now, as we have seen, the incoming solar radiation or insolation is in the short wave form. It is short wave radiation. So most of the atmosphere is transparent to the insolation. Therefore, it lets the radiation to pass as such, right. So this radiation, when it strikes the surface of the earth itself starts behaving as a radiating body. Earth is heated by this insolation, it starts behaving like a radiating body and gives out radiation. This radiation that is given out because the earth is behaving like a radiating body is the terrestrial radiation. It is the terrestrial radiation which is a long wave radiation that ultimately heats the atmosphere. So atmosphere is indirectly heated by the terrestrial radiation and not directly heated by the incoming solar radiation, right. So now we have done insolation, we have done terrestrial radiation. Now the next topic that we come to is the heat budget of the earth. Earth as a whole does not ultimately in a year gain or lose heat, it maintains its temperature, which is the reason why life is surviving on the surface of the earth. Why it maintains its heat budget is because the insolation, that is the incoming solar radiation, is balanced by the outgoing solar radiation or the terrestrial radiation, right. So the earth ultimately maintains its heat budget. Now how now another concept from this is, let's say around 100 units of incident solar radiation are striking the surface of the earth, are coming towards earth. Around 35 units of this incoming solar radiation is either scattered, absorbed or reflected. Out of the 100 units that are received of the incoming solar radiation, 35 units, they are either scattered, absorbed or reflected back into the space before even striking the surface of the earth, right. It is only the remaining 65 units that will strike the surface of the earth. 35 units are either scattered, absorbed or reflected back. Now the amount of incoming solar radiation that is reflected back into the space is known as the albedo of the earth, right. The amount of incoming solar radiation that is reflected back into the space is known as the albedo, right. So now from here we come to the concept of albedo. Albedo is the portion of the incoming solar radiation that is reflected back into the space, right. So it is a reflection coefficient and it is different for different surfaces. For example, the amount of incoming solar radiation that is reflected back from snow is the highest. Snow also, if it is freshly fallen snow, it will reflect back more radiation, right. So albedo is different for different surfaces. What is albedo? It is the portion of incoming solar radiation that is reflected back into the space. What is albedo for different surfaces on the surface of the earth is shown on your screens. Albedo is highest for fresh snow, then comes ocean ice, then comes new concrete, and so on and so forth. Now in general, white objects or light colored objects, they have the highest reflection coefficient, or they have the highest albedo as compared to dark objects which have low albedo, right? Light colored or white objects, they have the highest albedo. And because of this, light colored objects, because they reflect back more heat, they are cooler as compared to dark colored objects. Now this particular thing is also used in construction. This thing is kept in mind for human made structures as well. For a given area, albedo, for a given area on the surface of the earth, albedo varies with the soil composition, the configuration of the surface, right, and the cloudiness at the place. For a given surface also, albedo varies from time to time. It depends upon the soil composition, the configuration of the surface and the cloudiness. Right, so now we know what is insolation, what is terrestrial radiation, what is heat budget of the earth, what is albedo. Albedo is the amount of incoming solar radiation or insolation that is reflected back into the space. It is highest for freshly fallen snow. Now, next we come to how albedo affects global warming. Now there is something known as the average albedo of the earth, which is which should remain constant. Now if the average albedo of a particular year is higher than the previous year, so the average temperatures for that year will be lower, right? Vice versa, if average albedo for a particular year is lower than the previous year, that means the amount of radiation that has been reflected back is lower. Okay? So this will result in rise in temperatures, right? So the albedo has to stay constant if we do not want the rise in temperatures on the surface of the globe. Now we have seen, what we have covered in this lecture is, we have covered insolation, the factors on which insolation is dependent. We have covered terrestrial radiation. We have covered heat budget of the earth, right? And we have covered albedo and its consequence on global warming. Thank you. नमो, ये बंद कैसे करना है?
उमेश उमेश बंद कर दे।
ना उस पे करती हूँ, इस पे मैक हैंग हो जाता है।
बंद कर दे, उसमें मेमोरी कार्ड डाल के इसमें लगा दे।